Hello, everyone, and welcome to bonus coverage of the Farm Progress Show in Decatur, Illinois. Thank you for joining us here on AgriTalk Online. We have talked a lot recently about the quest for 300 bushel corn, and I know for some farmers listening, that may really sound way out there because this year they're hoping to get somewhere close to 200 and may not in some of their fields because just the type of year it's been. But we know that quest for 300 bushel corn, the potential is out there. How do we get there? And we've talked about some of the research done by Dr. Fred Below from the University of Illinois, and we've mentioned that he's worked with a number of different partners, one of them being Mosaic, and we're very happy to have with us Dr. Dan Froehlich, new product development for Mosaic, and also Tadgh Davis, technical sales manager. We're going to talk about this quest and how we get there, how we move from where we're at now up to that 300 bushel corn. And Dan, I'll start with you. It's good to talk to you again. This is an interesting approach that Fred Below has taken, looking at a lot of different aspects, a lot of different components that we'll need to address to get to 300 bushel corn.
Yeah, it is. We're taking a little bit different approach than most people do. Instead of looking at one input at a time, we're looking at a whole system. And we know that for corn production, there are about 5 factors that are the major drivers. Nitrogen, of course, P&K fertility, genetics play a big role in this, as well as plant population, and then the use of a fungicide, somewhat for disease control, but also for the growth regulator that's contained inside that.
And the key is finding out the best way to combine all of that for the end result that the farmer is looking for.
That's correct. So we started this process by looking at these 5 factors and what does it take to go from 200 bushel corn to 300 bushel corn. And so we based our initial rates on those kind of parameters, what kind of plant population we needed to achieve it as well.
What have we learned so far in this research?
Well, this is our 3rd year into doing this, and we have about 10 locations in several states. And a couple things that we've learned, key ones are, you really can't drop out any of these 5 factors because the factors that controlled yield in 2009 are different from the ones that controlled yield in 2010.
And what I've learned from talking with you over the years is you start skimping or cutting back in one area, you're going to pay the price somewhere down the line.
That's right. Especially, we saw the impacts of cutting back on P&K fertilizer when fertilizer prices were very high a few years ago. Those soil test levels dropped considerably over just from 1 year of doing that, and we're getting close to critical levels on those, which are going to take a lot to correct in the over years.
Let's bring Tadgh Davis in here. And Tadgh, I want to talk about micro-essentials. And let's go back and explain again. When we say micro-essentials, what are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about a brand of ammonium phosphate products, and specifically for Illinois, we talk about Micro Essentials SZ, which is a dry fertilizer, again, ammonium phosphate product that has sulfur and zinc in the granule. 10% actually sulfur, half of that being elemental and half of that being in the sulfate form, so we get season-long sulfur availability for the crop. And then we also have the 1% zinc in the granule as well.
Now, what are we learning about the use of micro-essentials to get to 300 bushel corn?
Well, we see an increase in nutrient availability and uptake, specifically phosphorus, with this product. So we're getting higher yields from that, and also we're seeing more and more deficiencies out in the fields in sulfur and zinc. And with this product having both those nutrients in the granule, we get a better distribution with the product, and again, we get higher yields.
Dan, we're getting used to new traits coming along to give us better insect protection or whatever it may be. But it seems like we've kind of hit maybe a plateau here where basically if you ask most farmers, they'd say what determines if big yield or not, they would say, well, whether it rains or not, because especially a year like this where it's quit raining in so many places. But we're looking at the factor, and weather's always going to be a factor, obviously, but trying to tap the potential that is out there that maybe we're not tapping right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. And there are some things that we can do on the fertility side that will maybe get that plant off to a better start. And when it's off to a better start, we get a better root system so it can tolerate some of these weather extremes that we have. It's a little deeper rooted. We're seeing that in the plots that are here at the show, where we have better root formation. Those plants didn't roll up as early yesterday, and I'm guessing by Thursday it'll really be dramatic. And if we kind of take care of that fertility on the front end, it sets the plant up to be able to do much higher yields, and then the weather's going to drive whether it's realistic or whether realized or not.
Tadgh, I made the comment the other day. I mean, we focus on the yields we've lost this year because of how hot and dry it got. But I think the story that doesn't get told is the yield we do get in these kind of conditions that we wouldn't have been able to get 5-10 years ago.
Absolutely, and talking about the 7 wonders of the corn yield world and the factors, it's a system approach, and with micro essentials specifically, we're seeing in Illinois a 5 to 15 bushel jump in corn on average, so we're seeing a really nice jump there, and that's just one of the pieces of this overall factor to push those yields up.
One of the things we're seeing, Dan, that the population counts are really going up. They're planting at a much higher population rate. How does that affect nutrient management?
Well, one of the problems with increasing the plant populations, if you don't change anything else, you're probably more likely to lower yields than you are increase them. And it doesn't take a lot of extra inputs to make the higher plant population be very consistent and really get those top end yields. We know that mathematically you probably need to be over 40,000 plants per acre or ears per acre to achieve 300 bushel corn. And last year we actually did have a 300 bushel corn at one location. It was corn on corn, and we put extra nitrogen and phosphorus on and the fungicide, but we were able to drive 300 bushel corn at 45,000 plants per acre.
So the key is going to be, can we do it in an efficient manner that it's not so cost prohibitive that you don't want to get to the point where, we grew 300 bushel corn, but did our costs go up 300% in the process? We want to avoid that, obviously.
Exactly. We've been looking at the agronomic optimum, so we were trying to push yields. We weren't as concerned about what the cost of doing this was. And typically, to drive that extra 100 bushel of yield, it was costing us about 32 bushel of corn of added inputs. Now, the good news is over that 10 locations that we had the last 2 years, we averaged 62 bushel increase. In the worst case, we had a 40 bushel increase. So what we're trying to do now is fine-tune that. Instead of the agronomic optimum, we're still have our eye on that, but we're looking at the economic optimum, so we're backing off those rates and trying to find what kind of efficiencies can we pick up, and then the step after that will be the environmental optimum. How do we drive that?
And Tadgh, I was thinking about this with my lawn, actually, and trying to keep some water on it this summer. It's been so hot, and think about how much it needs to have something to drink. But I also have to remind myself I can't neglect the fact that it has to eat, too. You have to feed it, too. We're talking about the same thing for a corn plant, aren't we?
Absolutely, and again, with micro essentials, we get better nutrient uptake because of the chemistry of the granule. So even versus a MAP or DAP, you're going to get better nutrient uptake and availability of the nutrients for that plant, and again, higher yields.
Okay, Dan, let's wrap it up with the big question here. When, I'll ask you if your answer is yes, then I want to know, when do you think 300 bushel corn will be as commonplace as 200 bushel corn is now?
I think within 5 years we'll have 300 bushel corn, and again with the top producers that are willing to look at a whole system. And I think I told you a few months ago, we're still looking at 300 bushel corn, but we're trying to develop things that'll do 400 bushel corn. So we're trying to push that because we need some fields going 400 bushel to have an average of 300.
The 7 Wonders research is starting to kind of give us the blueprint we need to achieve that.
It is, and this started in Illinois with Dr. Bilo, and we're expanding that concept out to other states to make sure that we can replicate this as we go across the Midwest for sure, and then we'll try to expand it out beyond that as well.
And do you see us keep stacking traits as part of that?
I think that's one way to do it. We need to find which traits are the next limiting ones. The corn rootworm gene has a huge impact on that root health and the nutrient uptake, but there may be other things. We know on the fertility side, sulfur and zinc's important, but the next limiting one's going to be boron. So how do we drive that to get the yields up to that next plateau?
Tad, you agree with that?
I do. I think boron obviously is the next nutrient to think about. But as far as 400 bushel corn, yeah, we've got to have 400 bushel corn, like he said, to get the averages of 300. And I think I'm maybe not quite as optimistic as 5 years, but 5 to 10, I think we'll definitely do it.
We know how critical it is with the demand the way it is, growing all the time, and the need to produce more on every acre. Good to see both of you. Thank you very much. It's exciting. I'm hoping we're going to be sitting here soon talking about 300 or 400 bushel corn. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
All right. Dan Froehlich and Tadgh Davis with Mosaic. All right. We're at the Farm Progress Show, opening day here in Decatur, Illinois. We'll take a break. We're going to come back and talk combines at Case IH. That's next on AgriTalk Online.